Good.
So, where did you start in the very beginning, or how did it all come about?
What, the band?
Yeah,
Well, where do I begin? I mean, I've always done music, but always on my own. Actually, I got really obsessed with bedroom recording when I was in my teens. I had a little 4-track recorder, and I used to write all these songs and I used to record them, and and play guitar and keyboards. They were very, very self-indulgent, but I kind of carried on with that for years, really, and massed all these songs. And then the band really came up. So Cult and a Name is my first band, actually, even though I was 29 when we had our first gig, bizarrely enough. And John Books, the other guy in the band, basically we met because we worked together at HMV.
right.
So we worked together at HMV, and everyone that worked at HMV was either a wannabe musician, actor, artist, poet. No one was there because they wanted a career
I
selling
thought
CDs.
I
Yeah.
thought they were all pop stars who worked at HMV.
Well, exactly. Yeah, future pop stars. I met a few pop stars coming into HMV. Terry Hall came in once, and people like that. Adam Clayton once. But yeah, so then, but we didn't form the band then. He was already in other bands. He was in a couple of the duos and stuff. But we stayed mates and stuff, and left that job, went on to other jobs and things. And we always kept in touch. And then it kind of like the bands that he was in kind of ended, and I thought, really, I should these. I'm, just recording stuff on my own at home is just pointless. Why don't we try and marry up, and with his brilliant sort of piano playing skills and my sort of songwriting, let's see where it leads. And that's kind of how it started, really. And no real expectations as such. We started out, we did lots of gigs, and then obviously we had a few breaks that led to kind of the first album and stuff. And that's really where it came from.
Yeah, I mean, what do you actually? Because listening to your albums,
Yeah.
I can never quite put my finger on what I'm listening to.
Yeah,
No, no,
in a
no.
good way.
Well, in a good way, because I'm trying to. Is it sort of jazz? Is it sort of electronic jazz? Is it just electronic? Because some of the songs completely go from one thing to another.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
how would you class it?
I don't know. I originally I've said that we were post-punk electronic balladeers, which is a bit pretentious, but
Yeah, I could
it's
go with that.
yeah, it's just the it's not particularly we don't deliberately set out to do it the way that we do, but we've had right from the beginning people telling us that it's quite different and a bit hard to categorize, which we
Yeah,
think that's a good thing. So we'll just continue doing it the way that we do it. It's just the influences. I think it's really, we're an electronic band, but unlike a lot of electronic bands, and and I like jazz. A lot of electronic musicians hate jazz. A lot of in synth pop and kind of synthesizer music, jazz is considered, like the devil's music, isn't it? I love jazz and blues. I grew up a bit on that. My dad's a big jazz fan. John, the other guy, he is a big classical music fan,
right.
and actually, so you've got these kind of, we're an electronic band that, although we love electronic music, that's far from all we listen to, and
Yeah, it's not it's not what you would say as electronic.
yeah,
Numan or other people,
yeah,
or well, maybe even not Numan nowadays, but it's just a combination of. I mean, I think personally, I love it. So, but then,
thank, thank you very much.
well, no, I suddenly discovered jazz about 2 years ago.
All right. Okay, it's an age thing.
Well, maybe. I sort of always hated it, and people used to say, "Oh, I bet you love jazz." No. Because I think in the early '80s, when I was of age as such, um, because everything was so electronic as such, and I always sort of believed I was Numanized, where if it didn't have full syncing, I weren't really interested.
But yeah, it's interesting. But Newman, of course, did a lot of stuff, not necessarily jazz, but a lot of other influences in Newman, you know. And even just for electronic music, for me, obviously, like, Newman is a big Gary Newman fan. We'll come on to that, I'm sure. But just also for, if you think of some of the big classic electronic musicians, bands like Yellow and Art of Noise were always more important for me than the likes of Kraftwerk, actually. I mean, I massively admire Kraftwerk, and of course they're incredible, but they don't hold as much interest for me as bands like Yellow or the Art of Noise, which just had this just totally random approach. You know, they just chuck everything in there, and I just found that more interesting for me. And Newman, he did, of course, he had a lot of kind of black music influences, particularly from his sort of late 80s stuff as well, which actually have a bit of a soft spot for some of that. But yeah, it's just one of those things, I guess.
Yes, he did change. He did change. Like On I Assassin, and
yeah, great album.
It's funny, really. I think with some of these albums and a lot of music, I think as you get older, you suddenly appreciate it more.
Yeah.
Sometimes at the time, you sort of, well, what's happened to Gary here? He's gone all Japanish. He's using this. I mean, I remember like going to, I don't know, Warriors or Berserker, and sort of thinking, play the old stuff. But anyway, that's
yeah. Try and get a bit more light. Yeah, sorry, hang on. So dark.
More play the old stuff like it was played, but
yeah, and yeah, there we go. It's a bit more light. Yeah, but he's always put a lot of influences in, and actually, and this might surprise some people, but Dance is my favourite Gary Newman album.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
And I Assassin is very much up there as well. And I did hear I Assassin is one of his personal favourites as well. And it was great that he was playing Stories on the last tour, you know, which is really nice to see. Fantastic song. It's just because it's just a very very out there album. So yeah, I mean, I love all that stuff, and I do. Obviously, you know, Savage is a fantastic album and all the rest of it, but actually, some of the industrial stuff that he does now doesn't tick my box particularly. And I don't mind some of that. Obviously not Machine and Soul, but you know, even Outland, some of that I quite like some of it, and you know, Metal Rhythm is a great weird pop, aggressive pop record, you know, Berserker and Fury and stuff like that.
It's been a long time since I've played it, if I'm honest. That's
Which one?
Both of them, actually.
Right.
Outland and Metal Rhythm. I must pull them out, actually, and give them a whirl again. Because I probably didn't hear them. I probably only heard them a couple of times when they came out and put them away. But,
yeah,
but then,
a bad record. I mean, it's partly the reason I guess I like them is partly when your entry point is, you know, because obviously I'm a bit younger than you, and my entry point for Gary Newman, I became a Newman fan in about 1991, and the first Newman album I bought was, and that's just an age thing, the first Newman album I bought was actually Skin Mechanic, the live album.
All right, okay.
And I loved it, and it had a real energy about it, and so I have always had a bit of an affection for some of that stuff from the era. Obviously, I love all the early stuff as well, but yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you know, Machine and Soul was set aside, although Skin Game I thought was a very good single. But
there's a couple of good tracks on it, but yeah, again, it's another one I as a fan I would buy and play. And then play, and then think, no, I'll put it away now. It's
no, absolutely. But
so you've got a bit of influence off everything, really. Then
I guess so. I mean, I like it's and even with electronic music and synth music and stuff, there are some bands that people would expect me to like that I'm not massively keen on, and others that I really, really love. So I'm not, you know, big Numan fan, big fan of the likes of Yellow, you know, love Blancmange, those sorts of bands from that time. Never been particularly massive on Japan, I must say. Never been particularly massive even on Depeche Mode, actually. But
no, I'm not a fan of Depeche. I did see Japan in '81, I think.
yeah,
Or '82. They were better live.
really.
Yeah, because Mick Carn, I don't. Some of the videos of Mick Carn, he seemed a bit weird, but I think you had to have been there at the time, if not, I'd appreciate it. But yeah, it's like I said, your stuff goes from some real quiet, slow, touching stuff to something a lot more upbeat. And how does that work when you play it live?
We mix it up a lot, and actually sometimes it's a bit of a frustration for us because getting live gigs in the first place, because people think that we're gonna just play all the slow ones, or vice versa, if we're in a very small venue, we'll just play all the fast ones. And we've done 10 albums now. The 10th album's coming out next year, and basically we can play any kind of set you want. You know, that we have turned up at the venue before and actually swap the set list around because we think, okay, this kind of venue suits these songs rather than these songs, and we do what suits the venue. If it's a big PA system and it's people standing up, all that kind of stuff, you don't want to be too many kind of slower, quieter ballads. You want to keep people on their feet, so we do the set that suits that. Likewise, we've done some very nice kind of more intimate gigs, you know, in various places where actually some of the quieter stuff just going to work. It's just not going to work playing a really loud kind of upbeat one. The PA system's not going to support it. So we're quite lucky in that sense to be able to adapt what we do even on the day we get to the venue. But getting gigs can be annoying because people will, because, you know, you'll get a booking agent or a promoter will kind of look up on YouTube and they'll the wrong song might come up, you know, and it's like, well, it's not something I'm going to do, so don't worry, you know. So that's what we do, really. We just adapt.
Yeah, because I well, as you know, I was getting Chris Payne and Dramatis.
Yeah.
And he just kept saying to me, "You've got to get Colt with No Name."
Is that what
Yeah. It's all he kept saying to me. We've got to get Colt with No Name. So,
right, guy.
Yeah. I said, well, I sent you a message, didn't I? So, but unfortunately, I wasn't playing it.
Only because the London and Birmingham one's been rescheduled, isn't it? So I believe. Yeah. So I don't know whether hopefully at one stage we can reorganise the Dramatis one for Norwich.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think when this all started, where I do the venues, they were sort of obviously had to cancel everything, and we're hoping for this big bottleneck towards the end of this year where they were going to get all the big stars in. Obviously, that's not happening either now, so who knows? I mean, it'd just be good to get people back on stage, wouldn't it?
Yeah, anyone, and Dramatis in particular, because what is that, their first tour or something? I don't think they ever toured, did they? I'm not sure. But
they did tour originally, because Dennis Haynes dropped out right at the last minute.
Right.
He was in Numan's band, and then he went into Dramatis, and I think they just signed to do a tour, and he said, "I'm not doing it," and left. So at that point, you even got Cedric on the keyboards, you know. I never went to one, unfortunately, but I would have thought it was quite interesting.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and you know, Love Needs No Disguise is an incredible record, isn't it? Really amazing song. But with Chris, I mean, that's very kind of Chris. We got to know Chris through, or I got to know Chris through Rusty Egan. Yeah. Rusty Egan, because I sang a song on Rusty Egan, a couple of songs on Rusty Egan's album, which has got Midura on it and Peter Hook and people like that. And a song called Ballet Dancer, which Chris co-wrote. And so I've performed it a couple of times with Chris on stage, which has been really nice, including in Germany, in Düsseldorf. And we kind of became sort of friends after that. He was very, very complimentary about what we do, which is very kind of him.
I think is the Rusty Egan album the one at the end? He just names all people.
Yeah, thank you. It's got a track at the end called Thank You. Welcome to the Dance Floor. The album, yeah.
I really like that song. Funny enough, it's just weird, but yeah. But it's quite a good one. So how do you go about writing your songs?
Well, I generate the songs myself initially, unless they're instrumentals. So John does those, and I tend to write on guitar. That's only because it's quite an instant way to write. You get a little melody in your head or whatever, you pick up a guitar, you strum your chords, etc. It tends to happen these days with the advent of mobile phones. Is I have on my phone, I've got voice recorder, voice notes. I sing in little melodies and things when they come to me. Usually name them like the artist that I think it sounds a bit like, or who I've probably ripped it off from. And then at some point I'll come to it, and then I'll try and turn that into a song. Usually, like I say, sat down at the guitar. When I've got that, then you kind of make that decision about how you're going to arrange it, because you can arrange a song in 50 million different ways. And I just, Numan's just acoustic versions of our friends. You can arrange a song. I once heard that Heart of Glass by Blondie was originally written as a reggae song. So you can arrange a song in a million ways. Yeah. So I have to think about, is this going to be one of the sort of gentler, kind of more acoustic ones, or is this going to be a full-on electronic, fast? And if it's a more gentler acoustic one, I then tend to take that to John, the other guy in the band, and he works on his piano part. He's very quick. We get that down and we add the atmospherics and the strings. If it's one that's going to need a fuller arrangement with drums and stuff, I tend to start doing the programming with loops, or programming the drums, bass lines, riffs and things. And again, I then take that to John, and he adds his extra keyboards, the piano, strings. Lots of, you may notice on Covenant Names, lots of weird noises kind of drifting in, kind of like sweeping. That's all really. And that's kind of how it starts, really. So I'm lucky that I seem to be reasonably prolific, and also because I was saying earlier, I did all these songs when I was in my teens and 20s, that occasionally I can draw on an older song that I think maybe the lyrics are always awful, but when I look at these songs and I was from like 18 or 22 or whatever, I think, oh, actually, the melody there is all right. So there've been a few examples where I've taken an older song and kind of developed it again, but generally, I kind of knock out some new ones.
Yeah, because I had while I was on the beach, I had on my headphones.
Wow. Which album?
Well, several. I just had them on. Well, first thing is I have them on a mix, and then I have to keep stopping to find out which one I'm actually listening to and what album that's on.
All right, okay. There's a lot, yeah.
I've got them on my phone, and then I think, well, I like that one, so I'll go back to play that one again, and I might listen to it about 10 times on the trot, and then I'll move on to another one, as you do, sort of thing. Oh God, I forgot what I was going to ask you then. Yeah, because you were then saying on the sound, it's like your track "Girl."
Oh yeah.
Like when you're almost whispering it, but you've got the huge synth sort of following as you're saying it. Well, not the huge synth, but it's sort of
synth line. Yeah.
The two syncing together really perfect.
Thank you very much. That's one of our earliest songs, Girl. The second gig we ever played is the first time we performed that song, and it's funny because we tend not to play. I mean, I know all bands say we tend not to play the early stuff. I'm quite happy playing the early stuff. It's just our first album we think is a little bit ropey, actually. Although Girl is an exception because it's on that first album. But it was quite an important song for us in the early days because we sent it to Future Music, magazine Future. Do they still exist? I don't even know. But anyway, and they picked up on it, and they picked it up because you used to be able to send in demos and stuff. So we sent in Girl, and they made it as one of their favourite tracks that month. And it was one of the first bits of positive press, that 3 lines that we had that we never had. And it's one of those things. It's like, oh, that's nice. So yeah, Girl is. I'd like to do it live again, Girl. The only problem with it is a bit high. I mean, it's 13 years old now, and my voice has got a bit lower, and it's a bit hard for me to hit some of the notes, but it's nice to do.
Because I must admit, with the band Cult with No Name, and I was talking to, just going back a couple of years, I was talking to Andy McCluskey and Paul Humphreys.
Yeah.
And I talked to Paul, funny enough, and I was saying about how their music, you can listen to a new album and almost go back to their first album, and you could almost be listening to the same.
Yeah.
They haven't changed. You know, their music is still. If you listen to them, you know it's OMD. Like with yourselves, because I have on 9 or 10 albums on a mix.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know if I'm listening to the first album or your new album.
That's good, and people, it's interesting that people do. It's very flattering when people say, that our stuff is quite diverse, but it does kind of always sound like us, which is the thing. And I forgot to mention OMD in the sense that a big shared influence for me and John, OMD, and I think you can hear a bit of OMD influence in what we do, some of the songs. And particularly on the next album, there's a track that I think could almost be OMD. But yeah, we'd like, hopefully we can support them one day. Touch wood.
But you know what I mean, and I meant that in a really nice way. I know Gary would say, "Well, my next new album is better than the last one. My last album was crap," and I think, "Well,
yeah, he always does."
But I think it's quite, nice when you can just get that whole. Has Andy McCluskey ever heard you?
He has heard us, and he said that we were a very cool band. And I know that because I saw the email. So we're good friends with. There's a band called Tiny Magnetic Pets. You've heard of them? Really great Irish electronic. We're good friends with them. Really, really great band, and they supported OMD quite extensively. And through them as well, we're hoping one day we might be able to support OMD on a tour. I just have to kind of get Andy to get hold of Andy and then suggest it. Particularly the next album is our most electronic by quite a long way. It's quite I wouldn't say a synth pop album, but it's it's interesting. I hope I'd love to. We'd really love to support them, obviously. But he has. I don't know whether Paul has. And I should also say, sorry, just to finish that story. Just in the last week, out of nowhere, I don't know how he heard us, but Mal Holmes, who was the drummer in OMD up until 5 years ago when he had his heart attack, he started following us on Twitter, and he doesn't follow many people. And he tweeted about us, a couple of our songs, saying you should check out this band, they're great. I've no idea how he found us, but that was very nice.
Well, Andy's a great guy for having people like yourselves tour with him. I know he offered a band, Analog Angel, I believe.
Okay, I've heard of them.
Well, they're departed now, but I think he offered them a support, but one of them didn't want dirt, so I think they sort of split up fairly soon after that. But I'm not.
I want to do it, it's crazy, but jump at the chance.
Hopefully, I'll be talking to him in the next week or two. So
okay,
I'll put in a plug.
That would be very kind of you. That's right. He just has. He's aware of us. We might have forgotten, but it's he may have ideas. The last tour they had he had his son's band, which was actually, because when it was announced, oh, it's his son's band, I thought, well, damn, I missed out again. And not that we expected to have it happen or anything, but I actually really liked his son's band. I went to the gig thinking, oh, I'm not gonna lie, I actually thought they were quite good. They weren't necessarily suited for OMD's audience because they were kind of more guitar band, but I was quite impressed. I did speak to them afterwards, but anyway, but yeah, that would be very, very kind of you.
Oh yeah. So just at the moment though, I mean, when I think I'm going to talk to David Brooks again pretty soon, because
yeah,
obviously the music industry. Is he awake?
Yeah.
Oh,
right, don't worry, we'll carry on.
Don't worry, mate. It's only the first 5 years, and you're all right.
Yeah, only 4 years and 9 months to go.
It soon goes, funny enough.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, my oldest son's now 27, so
Wow.
I don't have to talk about it. But how do you find the whole industry at the moment with everything what's going on?
I mean, we're not we're semi-professional as musicians. Not fully professional. For us, it doesn't affect us in the same way as the likes of Gary and Andy and all the rest of it. So we're lucky in that sense that we're sitting outside of it financially. But it's just, you just don't know when it's going to end. That's the problem, because I mean, I'm seeing all these tours being announced for next year, even 2022, and you just don't know when is it going to end and when can we return. And it's interesting, I've got friends, obviously musicians that I know in abroad, and it's interesting how it is starting up again. A friend of mine, a guy called Blaine Reininger, who's was in a band called Tuxedo Moon that I'm a big fan of and we've worked with. He did a gig in Austria a couple of weeks ago, an indoor gig in Austria with about, I don't know, 100 people attending. You know, it's just something that's sort of unthinkable here. So that's quite interesting, I thought.
It is. I mean, and it's a shame. Well, it's a big shame. I mean, because I like going to see a lot of music.
Well, yeah, me too.
You know, and the whole thing is, yeah.
Yeah.
So when's the new album's out soon?
The new album is, we mastered it, and our mastering engineer is a guy who did OMD sound for many years, a guy called Charles Chicky Reeves, and he's, you know, he really likes our stuff, which is great. So we mastered it last week, 2 weeks ago, and we are looking to release it sort of March, April time. Okay. Yeah, you need 6 months lead-in time, which sounds ridiculous, but you do need 6 month lead-in time for albums these days. And I think the last album, Media Burn, I kind of rushed it a little. We didn't give it enough time. We were still getting, I mean, it was released in October this time last year, and we were still getting reviews for it in sort of April 2020. Because I had to kind of, you know, you have to give that lead-in time. But we're very, very happy with it. I know we say that. That's the kind of thing like Numan would say, you know, next album's the best album, next best album. But it came together a lot more easily, I would say, than the last one. Yeah, we're really happy with it, I think. We'll give some tasters, obviously. We're hoping to do a video or two ahead of the release, you know, give people a taste of what it's about.
Because I was watching some of your videos, they're very sort of like movie clips, aren't they, and stuff?
Well, yeah, those aren't the proper. We've only done a couple of real proper promo videos.
I like the one with the Japanese. Was it some kind of Chinese or Japanese film of?
Oh yeah, Over and Out of Here, I think that is.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. We've only done a couple of proper promo videos, and that's just cost. And the old movie clip thing is really, it's just, if I'm honest, I should confess, it's really just to have those tracks on YouTube, because YouTube, people underestimate the power of YouTube in the sense of 70% I read a statistic: 70% of people that go onto YouTube do it to listen to music. And I know I do. I tend to go onto you. I don't really use Spotify. You know, dirty word for musicians. I really don't use Spotify. So if I want to listen to something that I don't have in my collection or whatever, I just go on YouTube. And it's so those tracks are on YouTube, and you can either just have, you know, the name of the song on a blank screen, you know, otherwise black screen, or you can just do something a bit more interesting. So it started out as just something we did, and we've done so many now that people kind of quite like it. And John does a much better job than I do in terms of editing those together. So he did some really good ones. There's the track Needle and Thread. He did a really good one for using an old movie called Carnival of Souls. So yeah, it's about having them on YouTube and having something interesting to look at other than you know, just the name of the song.
Yeah, I mean, Over and Out Here is a brilliant song, absolutely brilliant.
That's that's a slow burner, that one, in the sense that when the album came, that album's 6 years old. When that album came out, it wasn't one that people picked up on. But in recent years, the last 3 years, a lot of people have said it's their kind of favourite, which is.
Well, it's a funny one, Rick. So I was listening to the album in my car, and it's the last track. And I got the beginning, and I thought, I can't be asked for this, so I'll go back to the beginning again and do this. And then one day I was driving, I thought, well, I will listen to this. And yeah, it stayed on repeat for quite a long time after that. So
great, thank you. That track came about in a slightly different way as well. That album, there are we work a lot with a singer called Kelly Ali. Yeah. And Kelly Lee was in a band called the Sneaker Pimps, which, you know, you may have heard. They did Six Underground, Spin Sugar. You might, if you'd heard the song, you'd know them. Big songs in the late '90s, big trip hop band. And Kelly's amazing, and she's a big fan of ours, and we're a big fan of hers. And anyway, we've done various things with Kelly over the years. And in fact, her album, she's got a new album coming out called Ghost Driver, and we did a couple of songs on that with her. But Over and Out of Here started out as she said, oh, give me a couple of sort of tracks to work with, you know, no vocals, sort of backing tracks I can work with, because I might want to develop them into a song. And we did that, and that was one of them. And she said, oh, I'm not really feeling this. So we didn't want to waste it. So I then wrote the melody, and it kind of went from there. And the track Everything Lasts an Age, which is on the same album, which has got Kelly singing all this kind of Indian vocals over the top, was the same. Ironically, it was a track that we gave to her, and then she said, oh, it's all right, I'm not really feeling this one. And then we did our bit, and then said, oh, I love it, can I add some backing vocals? So then she added all these amazing vocals over the top. So it's interesting how that song. Yeah.
Like I said, I was listening. If you got your headphones on, you can hear so much more, can't you? You know, than, I mean, my car, when I'm driving the CD, I miss most just about everything. But when you've got your headphones on, you can hear the lot, can't you? And
that's it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she does a brilliant job on that.
She does an incredible job, and it's one of my favourite. It sounds a bit poncy to say it or whatever, but when we perform that song live, which we do quite a lot, it gets me when at the end, when the drums come off and you just hear our vocals floating. Yeah. One of my favourite moments when we perform live, because I just think it's one of those things, not to be arrogant about it, because it's her. I'm just kind of standing there on stage and thinking, this is really good. And you can see usually, not always, but the audience, you know, if I can see their faces, I'm like, oh, yeah, I like this bit. It's one of the buzz moments when we perform live.
I always believe, if you do whatever you do in life, if you do something and you like it, there's no problem liking what you're doing. You know what I mean? If you're on stage, you think, I love this song, I wrote it. You know, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that, is it? You know.
Yeah. A bit of arrogance. You know. No. Sometimes on stage you need a bit of arrogance. Anyway, I think if you're going to perform. Just for those half an hour or 45 minutes or hour and a half, just the way Numan does it, you know. I've met Numan, you know, if I could tell you my Numan story, it's a bit embarrassing, but he's a very, very humble guy, of course, you know, as you know. But on stage, of course, he's doing the whole kind of Numan, and all that. He's loving it. Why not, you know?
He done what, sorry?
He's loving it, you know. He's soaking it all, and a bit like another one that always I think is a fantastic. He's almost a preposterous performer. I really love it. Is Pete Murphy from Bauhaus, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just, when he performs, he's just ridiculous. He's kind of pouting, and he's kind of like, you know, sort of like a goth Freddie Mercury, you know. But he's it's brilliant.
I saw him in about 82 or 3, I can't remember that. And the punk thing was still hanging on in there slightly.
Yeah.
And this was at the UEA in Norwich, and I think there was some punk, and they were still trying to do this sort of spitting at everyone.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that was about, but Pete Murphy stopped everything, and he said, "Look, stop. That's disgusting. Just stop it." They carried on playing, and this guy did it again. Pete Murphy just threw himself in the crowd and started beating chairs. Oh yeah. I mean, that was quite.
I don't know how closely you follow Pete Murphy back, but you know he's got into trouble a few times in recent years. So he about him being thrown out of his own gig. If you saw that in Sweden, yeah, he kicked a light, didn't he? Hit someone. I did see the footage outside the venue where he's trying to argue.
The sound was crap, wasn't it? The sound engineer was crap or something.
Yeah, there was that as well. I mean, when I saw him do, what gig was it? I think when he was doing with David J, he was doing In the Flat Field, the first Bauhaus album, and he was on stage. He was also being a bit difficult and kept gesturing to the sound man, and you know, it's a bit unnecessary. I think you save the arrogance for your performance, not for the people.
I think, yeah. I mean, if you're that bothered, have your own sound engineer. You know, I mean, but the days of Pete Murphy doing a big tour, I mean, he can still fill places. But whether he's still got his own sound, I doubt it. I don't know. Well, obviously not.
Wow. They did reform to do a gig, didn't they? Although I think it was cancelled. It was cancelled. What I'm saying, it was cancelled. They were going to play Alexandra Palace in April. I had tickets, and then it got moved to August, which I think was highly optimistic. And then I don't know what's happened to it. Actually, I'm sure it's been moved to October or something next year. But
he was I was trying. I then thought of something, but I completely forgot now. But that's me all over. But
so apart from Numan, and who are the other sort of bands and things that you like, and us bands and stuff that you like?
Do you know what? Having children growing up, you know, having their own tastes in music, suddenly changes my own taste. I mean, my daughter's a huge Taylor Swift fan.
Yeah.
So I found myself listening. I mean, I've got to admit, I even put a CD in my car one day and played it.
Wow.
You know, my middle son, he's a huge Lady Gaga fan, and a few others. But yeah, because you hear that blasting out all the time.
Yeah.
You suddenly think, well, actually, I don't mind this, but I'm not going to admit it to anyone. But you know,
good job that it's not going on YouTube, Steve. Yeah, but I'm joking.
I mean, you talk about bands reforming, because I'm talking to Sal Solo on Saturday of Classic Nouveau.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they would ever. There's been talk about it over the years, but I don't think he would do it.
Okay.
Because he's
been out of music for so long, hasn't he? I mean, I don't know whether he would. Yeah, whether that's something he would entertain. They managed to get Flock of Seagulls back together, didn't they, for a little while? Now it's only Mike Score, I think, is the only one left. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is the other problem. I mean, someone was talking to me about the Stranglers, and I said, well, they're a bit like Trigger's Broom, really, aren't they? You know,
well,
I mean,
my other one of my big influences are the Stranglers. So they were my favourite band as a teenager, and I was a member of Stranglers Information Service and the rest of it, and big influence for me personally. You know, Hugh Cornwell. So, yeah, what's happened to them is, well, I haven't minded too much because their last album, for example, which is called Giants, I actually thought was very good. A lot of the fans didn't, but I actually thought it was quite good. But now with Dave Greenfield, you know, keyboard player, dying, I'm sure you heard that. They're going ahead. They're still doing their tour with, I guess, 3 of them, but it's only, of course, JJ Burnell that's the original member, and it's. I'm not sure. Not interested.
I'm not always. I say I'm not. I haven't actually been to see a band, I think, who's got a different lead singer to what they had in the day. I mean, I think one of the first bands I saw would have been the Undertones.
Yeah.
Back in 70 something. And I do believe they're still touring, but obviously it's not the same. You know, to me it becomes a bit of a tribute band.
It is. I think the difficulty, though, and to be fair to those musicians, is of course over the last 15 years with the advent of downloads and MP3s and things, touring has become the primary source of income for bands, not record sales. As record sales have declined, it's the touring and it's T-shirt sales and it's the face mask sales at the moment that's keeping them afloat. And so, what do? You know, if you're on the I mean, I know a lot of those bands are on the breadline, but the Undertones, I can't imagine are raking it in. If the only option is to tour with a different singer, then that's it. There is a limit on how far you can push it, I guess. But
it's funny how things are turned on the heads, because back 70s and all that, you made your money out of your records.
Yeah.
Not on touring. When now because I remember talking to Gary a few years ago after a gig. I forget which album it was, but he said it cost him $15,000 to make this album. And no, he'd lost $15,000 on the album.
Right.
Because, you know, time he'd done it all, everyone had downloaded it for nothing or copied it and sent it. As he said, touring was his only income. You know, I don't use Spotify, I must admit. I do have Amazon Music, mainly because it's easy for Alexa and things like this. And,
yeah, sure.
And I do have it on my phone. I don't know what, you know, I download all your albums. I mean, I pay a certain amount a month. If you get anything out of that, I haven't got a clue.
You do, but it's very small, and it's to earn, if I remember rightly, Spotify, they're all pretty much the same. Some are a bit more than others, but for Spotify, you have to get 300 streams to earn £1, I think. I think that's correct. Is that right? Or is it might be 3. It trickles through, but it's not a lot, and even it's not a lot straight, and it's difficult because that's the way things are going, and even downloads, you know, are now, we've noticed downloads have really fallen away as well. It's either streaming or physical, and of course if you're doing physical product, it's that much harder to you have to put a lot more, which is not a bad thing. You have to put more effort in because people really want the package. You know, you have to do the whole limited edition stuff, vinyl, all that kind of thing, which is fine. It's hard for us because we've been doing CDs, as you know, just because we've got our own label now. I have the label. Doing vinyl is very, very expensive, and if it all goes wrong, in the sense of no one buys them, that's a very expensive.
Indeed, I mean, this is the big, and I suppose this is why a lot of people do this. Like Numan's campaign, I forget what it's called now, where you basically buy the album a year before it's made.
Like Pledge Music and those sort of. Well, Pledge has gone down the drain now, but Pledge Music is an interesting one because Kelly Ali, our friend Kelly, she was using Pledge Music very successfully for a number of years, and then they got very, very greedy with people pre-ordering stuff, and they put some of that money into other investments, which went, you know, tits up, and then they couldn't pay the artists, and so Pledge Music went down, and Kelly lost significant amounts of money. Bands like Killing Joke lost thousands of pounds, I believe, through Pledge Music. The Stranglers as well, because I pledged on a DVD, which was for a film. They were going to do a Stranglers documentary and produce a DVD. Never got that money back, you know. So yeah, the pre-order thing is one way of doing it. You've also got, you know, Gary does this kind of making music thing, and a patron is the new thing where you become a subscriber, which it's an option.
It's one of them ones. I know Gary gets quite a bit of stick from it, but I'm saying that a handful of people saying it's a load of crap and money making racket compared to the 100,000 people who still like his music, or however many thousands, it doesn't really matter, does it? You know, and if it's in a strange world we live in, some people have got too much money, and if they want to spend £100 a month to watch his, or get a video birthday message or something, fine. I mean, I've no grief with it, and if you can do it, you know.
Yeah, you know, people sponsor all sorts of things, don't they? You know, people. It's like sponsor. It's like it's an interesting approach. I know a few people that do it, and it seems to work for them. I guess it's about the quality of what you're offering, isn't it? I think with Gary, I could be wrong. When he first launched it, his pricing was far too high, and he kind of judged that a bit wrong. Which is, you know, if you're a millionaire, you might inclined to do that. But if you pricing it correctly, and you're, you know, another musician I know that he releases songs just for his subscribers and stuff, you know, once a month and stuff, and unreleased stuff and demos, and it's fine. I don't see a real problem with it.
I know what you mean, because when I wrote my book, I self-published it myself and everything.
I saw that. What's it called again?
Backstage.
Backstage. That's right. Yeah, I did see that.
So basically, I had self-published it myself. There was a printers near a few villages down or next town. So I paid for everything myself, and had I think about 1,000 books printed, which wasn't cheap.
No.
But you're on that sort of, well, will I sell them, or will I have a lot of doorstops for the rest of my life? You know, it's one of them. But lucky enough, it went okay. So yeah.
I thought I read that you were considering redoing it or republishing it or something.
Well, I did start to do other bit interviews with Joe Hubbard and people like that. But the tone of everything was changing. That during the first couple of years with Gary, obviously, I mean, I was surprised actually. He was better than what I thought. That, you know, everything what happened was his own idea on everything.
Okay.
You know, and you know, I was waiting for someone to say, well, he nicked that idea off me or something like that, and there was none of it. So that was really good fun. But then when I started interviewing other people, the tone was changing, because obviously Gary's career was then on the downward slope. And there was a lot going on, and I thought, well, I don't really want to do this book on that.
No.
You know what I mean? I liked the first one, nice and positive, everyone having a good time. You know, it was great fun for me to talk to people and everything, but no, it just, so no, I don't think so.
No, fair enough. Chris Payne is possibly thinking of doing a book. We're possibly going to trying to help him with it. So I did help him with it, in the sense I've done a kind of chronology for him, just to remind him of when all the tours were and all the records were and all the rest of it. But I think he's so busy with all this other stuff that you know, he hasn't had time. But hopefully one day it'd be nice. I'm sure Chris has got some really good good stories to tell.
Oh, he's got some great ones, and you see, and this is what you need, because when I was interviewing him, people forget things, obviously, as we do. And then you can remind them of something, and then suddenly they all remember.
Yeah.
And it sort of comes flooding back to them, doesn't it? You know, and so, and I think I might have said the same, Chris. Look, if you want, I'll happily give you a ring and we'll just chat and see what you remember. Because I think he's doing a book about his time with Gary or just something like that.
Mainly, the time with Gary. He's going to touch on, because he toured with Dead or Alive as well.
We did.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that, funny enough.
Yeah, no, and so and his other stuff as well. Mainly it's going to cover Gary.
It'd be a bloody good because I mean you spoke to Chris, haven't you? Obviously.
Yeah, I know Chris. Yeah.
I mean, he's the kind of guy you would just sit there listening to all night, isn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Really. And did you watch the one I'd done with Andy Coughlin there the other week?
I did actually watch a bit of it. Yeah. It's just not really. I had no idea he was Welsh. As soon as he started talking, I was like, "Wow, you are Welsh." He's got such a thick accent, doesn't he? But
well, the worst thing is we'd done it the night before, and I get an email to say your recording's done and everything, and I didn't get this email, so I then went into my Zoom thing and I hadn't recorded it. You know, so I sort of said, Andy, I'm really sorry. I said that didn't record. And he said, "Oh, call me tomorrow. We'll do it again." So yeah, he's a great guy.
It's really interesting the people you're coming up with to, some people that you never really hear from, of course, in Numan's career and stuff. Some very interesting perspectives, I think, about different eras. Mike Smith, I know you're going to be interviewing.
Yeah.
Good.
I'll tell you what, Bill Sharp was really good, actually.
Really?
Because I was a bit concerned with him. Oh God, no, I'm doing who am I doing? I'll tell you who I am concerned with is Richard Jobson. I'm talking to him tomorrow.
Yeah.
And he's an angry man, so I'm not looking forward to that one. But,
Bill? Yeah.
He was when I interviewed him on the phone, but I think that's just because we kept losing connection and
right.
We weren't a happy man, so we'll see how that one goes. But Bill Sharp was really, really entertaining. Actually, I mean, he was better than I thought he was going to be.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah. But speaking of angry men, I should, because there's a lot of talk about Numan. I should tell you my Gary Numan story, which is it's very embarrassing on part of me, on part of Gary, and I've only sort of told it once before in an interview, but all Numan fans, I guess, will hear it because they're listening to stuff. Anyway, I got into Numan as I said, early '90s, and I met a bona fide Numanoid in a record shop, sort of holding a Numan, and I sort of started talking to him, and he lived near me. I was only 16, 17. And I used to kind of go around on Saturday night. I used to go around his place and used to listen to Numan records and stuff. And then he said, "Oh, there's a Numan convention, fan convention. The first Numan fan convention in '92 or whatever it was. The Flag Promotions."
I think it was 93, 1 or 2, yeah.
Oh, and ironically, Flag Promotions, who put that on, became a big part of Colton and Ames' career because a lot of our early gigs were with Frank Drake. The Flag Promotion, and so I know Frank quite well. Anyway, so we went along, and it was great, and I really enjoyed it. And bizarrely enough, there was I don't know how this happened, but there was a point in the evening where I found myself sort of more or less alone with Gary in a corner. There didn't seem to be anyone else around. I know at that time he was quite kind of close to a lot of his fans. I mean, I was only, like, say, 16, 17, and I also at that time I was really getting into John Fox and Automatic and all that sort of stuff. I was really obsessed with John Fox at that time. I discovered Numan and got into John Fox. And for some ridiculously bizarre reason that I can only attribute to, the naivety of youth, my first question to Gary was, "Oh, Gary, I just wondered, how did you feel about people saying that you ripped off John Fox?" And, and just because I read about that, I didn't believe that necessarily, and I don't actually. But he went absolutely ballistic at me.
Yeah, imagine.
Okay, absolutely, quite rightly. You listen to me, pointed at me. You listen to me. John Fox screwed up his career when he went on Top of the Pops or Old Grey Whistle Test or whatever, wearing a Hawaiian shirt. And I was like, oh God, so sorry. And I did later on that evening. I didn't apologise for that, but I did shake his hand and I said, I just want to let you know, I know you want younger fans, and I'm a young fan. Anyway, that was that. But what was interesting was his biography, the Praying to the Aliens a few years later. When he talks about John Fox, he says, John Fox is a big influence, blah, blah, blah. However, I do think he made a mistake when he went on Top of the Pops wearing a Hawaiian shirt. I always wondered whether he thought, God, I remember that dickhead at the fan convention asked me that question when he wrote that. But anyway, it was just, one of those stupid things, you do. But I've never forgotten it, quite rightly. I have met him briefly a couple of times since, and I've interviewed him, but
I think we're all guilty of something like that. I mean, I remember seeing Classic Nouveau. There used to be a place out on the Norfolk coast, West Runton.
Yeah.
And all the big bands played there. And I don't know why, because it's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, the Sex Pistols played, T-Rex, everyone played there. Blondie, Toya, you can just go on, the Jam, the Police, and it's literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's burnt down nowadays. But anyway, for some unknown reason, I was in the dressing room with a mate and Sal Solo, who was about 82, 83. And this guy comes in, he's just been to the merch store, and he's got this single. And he's saying, oh, great gig, guys. He said, can you sign it for me? So Sal signed it, and he then gave it to me. I signed it, and so did my mate. And we gave it to him. And I thought, I'm not even in the band. I just sort of popped back. Yeah, that was quite amusing. But anyway, mate, look, I'm going to leave it to you.
Right.
It's been absolutely fantastic talking to you. We finally got there.
We finally got there. Thank you very much for being so adaptable. And what was I going to say? Thank you very much for your. I can't even remember how we got in touch in the first place. I've got to be honest. I guess it was through, wasn't it? And
I mean, I'm a newbie. Chris kept saying, "Gotta get this band," and I thought, I don't even know who they are. So I'm going to have a listen. Yeah. And I mean, my mate Chi at the electricity club. I mean, he'd kill me because he interviewed you years ago, didn't he? And then,
a few times Chi, but it's all right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of great music out there. So I just really appreciate, appreciate what your kind words and your support. Really, look out, keep updated with the next album. And
I'm looking forward to it. I'm just trying to track down some of your older ones to have on CD, but I'm sure.
One of them we're going to have back in stock soon. The album. Did I send you Above Us Below? I can't remember.
Yes, I've got that. Yeah.
You had the last copy. You had the last copy. The red cover.
No, anyway, I haven't. No.
That's going to be back in stock soon. So. There'll be one, and some of the older ones are impossible to get hold of because they're out of print now. But yeah,
Adam's Admin.
Iddy's Admin and Hope is Existence. I think.
I think that Iddy's Admin is the blinding song. I love it.
That's Strangler's connection on that because the guy playing guitar, Ebo guitar, on it is John Ellis of once of the Vibrators, and who.
Right.
The Stranglers when Hugh Cornwell left. He's a good mate of mine, John Ellis. Really great guy, and he plays.
Reminds me of the guy out of Japan on dance on is it Boys Like Me?
Yeah. That kind
the sort of, I don't know what sort of guitar it is, but
Ebo, Bill Nelson used it a lot. So I think of Warriors, the breaks in between Warriors after the chorus, It's
Yeah,
that's.
I mean, exactly the way it comes in. I mean, I always look at a song. I think the shame of it is it doesn't go on long enough. And to me, that's like, it's like, oh, I'm loving this. I'm like, oh, it's stopped. I've got to put it on again. You know, I think it's not, yeah. So,
quite deliberate as well. I mean, we do keep the song fairly short. You're right. That's quite deliberate. We do, if I'm honest, because just to be a bit different. Because I find, songs. We look at Gary. Songs and albums just seem to have got longer and longer and longer for no particular reason. What was wrong with Cars was 3.5 minutes. It didn't need to be longer than that. So we try to keep them quite succinct. Yeah.
And the good thing is, not on most of the tracks, they're very, and I said this to Andy Cluster years ago. Simplicity, I can't say it.
Simplicity, yeah.
Is the key.
Right.
I only had one glass, and that's a problem. It's sometimes the key to it, rather than, I mean, I think, talk about Gary again, a lot of his problem I find nowadays is there's so many layers of music.
Yeah, I agree.
It gets a little bit too much.
I agree.
Yeah, I prefer, I pick out 3 or 4 things, and I think, that's good. Maybe 5 or 6 even, but that's.
I agree, and we actually, for the next album, we've deliberately made it a bit more simple in terms of not putting 3 layers on top. Because Media Burn, the last album, there are a couple of tracks where there's a bit too much going on for me, and it spoiled it a little. So, some of the couple of tracks were a bit of a nightmare. Whereas this album, it's all been pretty straightforward because we deliberately kept it a bit simpler. Because you just don't need stuff.
Sometimes you don't, and well, you never do really. I mean, because the biggest problem then is if you play it live, half of it's recorded, which I've got no great beef with. It's been done since day dot. But sometimes, like with live music, maybe even demo tapes, I like this, the rawness of it all.
Yeah.
Just raw, live music. I mean, you want it really good, but it's raw, if you know what I'm saying. It's not.
It's got to be a bit, but the best, it's got to be a bit raw, a bit unpolished. It gives it edge, Great. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you. Thanks very much. And obviously, let me know when this is posted up and we'll share it on our social.
I shall either edit it in a bit, or I should just go to bed because my alarm will go off at 6 o'clock yet again.
Sorry, I kept you up.
No.
I'm a night owl anyway, actually, irrespective of having a baby. But
it's funny, really, because although I was away all last week, you're up all night. So you almost want a holiday when you get back because
body clock's all screwed. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I just seem to be out every night with Greek sort of food and drink, and you're like, this is good, but I need a break.
Holiday. All right. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks very much, Steve, and we'll have to do this again sometime, maybe when the album comes out, whatever. And real great pleasure. And
definitely, and thank you very much for your time, mate. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. All right, take care.
Well, see you, mate. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye then. Bye.
Bye.